This podcast is for informational and discussion purposes only and reflects personal experiences and opinions. It is not legal, medical, or mental health advice and does not create any professional relationship between you and I. Family court outcomes vary, and listeners should seek qualified professionals for guidance specific to their situation. This podcast may discuss sensitive topics, including emotional distress and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek immediate professional help by going to your nearest hospital or calling 911. Hey, dads, moms, supporters, family, and friends. It's Rachel K., host of Deadbeat Dad by Design, and we are back this week with episode 10. I am so excited. We have my co host back this week. Everyone's doing well. And then we also have an incredible guest on today. So make sure you get through the intro, get all the way through, and look to see, or if you're listening, listen to see who's on with us today. This is going to be a really, really good episode, and I'm glad that you guys are here to get to hear from him and get some really cool, wonderful insight from this guy. He is someone that I really admire and I really look up to in the shared parenting and father's rights movement. So, again, huge blessing to have him on. I'm going to get through my intro and then we will get right into it with our special guest. So, today's episode is called The Emotional Cost of Being the Non-Preferred Parent. And as always, if you're a mom who's going through something similar, I've said this before, I'm also a mom, so I understand. I hear you, I see you, I love you, and I support you. And we want to hear from you as well. This is a heavy one because if you've ever been labeled the non-preferred parent, you already know. You don't just feel rejected, you feel erased. Let's talk about the word preferred. What does it even mean? Since when did parenting become a popularity contest? Since when did stability, love, protection, provision, consistency take a back seat to who the child is more comfortable with in the moment? Let's be honest, in high conflict custody situations, preferred parent often doesn't mean healthier. It doesn't mean safer, and it doesn't mean more stable. Sometimes it just means that you're more aligned with the child's current emotions, or you're more aligned with the child's learned narrative. And sometimes you're more aligned with the child's avoidance. And the other parent, the one that may have more structure, the one that might have more rules, the one who says no, the one who enforces bedtime, maybe limits screen time, or the one who makes them go to school, that parent slowly becomes non-preferred. And what this actually feels like, let me paint you a picture. You're a parent who shows up. You try never to miss any time. You plan your schedule around them. You pay your support. You fight in court. You adjust your work schedule to be with them. You cancel all of your plans when it is surrounding your children. But then your child suddenly says, I don't want to go. I don't like it there anymore. I want to stay with mom. Or I feel like I'm more comfortable at mom's house. And then everyone around you looks at you like, maybe there's a reason. That's the emotional knife twist. Because not only are you rejected, you're now suspected. And that's a different level of pain. There's a grief that comes with being the non-preferred parent. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's quiet. It's sitting in your car after drop-off and staring at the steering wheel. It's replaying conversations in your head, wondering, what did I do wrong? It's questioning if enforcing rules was even worth it. It's wondering, should I just be the fun house? Should I never argue with them? It's looking at old photos thinking, they used to run to me. I used to be their hero. And the worst part? You can't say any of that out loud without being accused of manipulating. You can't say, this hurts. Because the moment you express pain, someone says, well, don't make it about you. But here's the truth. It does hurt. And pretending it doesn't doesn't make you stronger, it makes you silent. And there's a psychological toll that this takes. And we'll break that down. When a child rejects a parent, especially without any abuse, without any neglect, it triggers something primal. Rejection from your child hits deeper than rejection from a partner. It shakes your identity. It shakes your purpose. It shakes your belief in yourself as a parent. And when this goes on for months or even years, it can lead to depression, anxiety, hypervigilance, obsessive overanalyzing, emotional shutdown, or even overcompensating. Some parents start to believe that they need to bend over backwards trying to win back favor. They loosen the rules, they overbuy gifts, they avoid discipline, they start walking on eggshells. And others, they go the opposite direction. They detach. They protect themselves emotionally by pulling back. And neither response means that they don't love their child. It means that they're trying to survive the pain. And a lot of times, this preference is conditioned. And we can address something that's uncomfortable. Sometimes preference is actually organic. Kids go through phases. That's normal. They become teenagers, they have hormones. But sometimes preference is reinforced. Sometimes it's repeated. It's subtle, and many times preference is conditioned. When one parent says, well, if you don't want to go to dad's, you don't have to go. Or, I would never force you to go somewhere that you might feel uncomfortable. Or, I guess some people, like your dad, they just don't care anymore. That child becomes associating comfort with one house over the other. And not because the other home is actually unsafe, not because they're being neglected, not because it's not an environment that they should be in, but because one parent absorbs the child's resistance and the other holds boundaries. Kids gravitate towards comfort. That doesn't make comfort healthier. Then we have courtroom problems with all of this. Here's where things get dangerous. Sometimes the court treats a child's stated preference as gospel, especially as they get older. And listen, children's voices matter. They do. But context matters more. If the preference is based on structure differences, household rules, screen limits, bedtime enforcement, emotional loyalty conflicts, or it's being conditioned by the other parent, sometimes the courts end up validating the preference without examining the influence. And they can unintentionally reward the dynamic that created the imbalance in the first place. And the non-preferred parent sits there thinking, great, so now I'm being penalized for being a parent. And that's devastating. Children in high conflict situations often feel like they have to choose. Even if no one directly tells them to, they feel the tension. They feel emotional undercurrents. They sense which parent is hurt. They sense which parent is overly anxious. And sometimes they align with the parent who appears more fragile. They align with the one who they feel is going to break if they choose the other parent. Because protecting a parent feels powerful. Sometimes they can align with the parent who validates their resistance because that feels easier. It doesn't mean that they love the other parent less. It means that they're navigating adult emotions with a child brain, and that is not fair to them. The internal dialogue of the non-preferred parent is a hard one. Some of these quiet thoughts need to be said out loud. They might be thinking, maybe I should just stop enforcing homework. Maybe I'm being too strict. Maybe I should just let them do whatever they want when they're here at my house. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm just really not cut out for this. And underneath all of it, why am I so easy for them to walk away from? That's the one that no one wants to admit because it feels shameful, but it's real. When your child resists you long enough, you start questioning your worth. And I need you to hear this clearly. Structure does not make you unlovable. Boundaries do not make you abusive. Expectations do not make you unsafe. And parenting is not a popularity contest. Children operate from emotion. Adults are supposed to operate from vision. Kids want immediate comfort. Parents are supposed to think long term. When you hold the line on school, when you hold the line on respect, on responsibility, on accountability, you're playing the long game. They may not prefer you at 13 years old, and that's okay. But they will thank you at 25. And that requires strength that most people don't see. There's a danger in chasing being the preferred parent. If you turn parenting into a competition, the children lose. When parents try to out-fun each other, out-gift each other, out-validate each other, the child becomes the trophy. And the trophies don't grow into healthy adults. Consistency does that. Stability does that. Two homes that refuse to weaponize love does that. And so for the parent listening who feels like they're rejected, I want to speak directly to you. If you're the one who is hearing, I don't want to go. If you're the one being labeled difficult, if you're the one who feels like you're slowly being edged out of your child's emotional world, just breathe. Do not abandon your role to chase their approval. Do not collapse your standards to earn temporary affection. Do not turn into someone you're not just to feel chosen. Stay steady, stay kind, stay regulated. Do not speak poorly about the other parent, because kids eventually see patterns. They eventually compare consistency. They eventually grow up. And when they do, they will remember who stayed grounded. If your child truly feels disconnected from you, then we do need to be honest. You need to pause. You need to self-reflect, and you need to ask yourself, am I emotionally available? Do I listen without defensiveness? Do I validate feelings without dismissing? And do I apologize when I'm wrong? Because sometimes preference isn't manipulation. Sometimes it's unmet emotional needs, and maturity means we are willing to examine that as well. This podcast exposes injustice, but it also demands growth. There are long-term emotional costs of being the non-preferred parent. It can stretch over years, and it can impact your future relationships, self-esteem, trust, and emotional resilience. Some parents carry that rejection into new partnerships. They fear abandonment. They overcompensate. They become hypersensitive to being chosen last. It seeps into everything. And that's why we have to talk about it. Because pretending it doesn't matter doesn't make you strong. It makes you isolate. And isolation is dangerous. So there are some things that can actually help. Here are some of those things. Number one, go to therapy. Not because you're broken, but because rejection trauma is real. Number two, find a support group. Other parents who get it will get you. Number three, documentation. Not to obsess, but to ground yourself in reality when gaslighting starts to creep in. Number four, stay neutral about the other parent, especially in front of your children, no matter how hard that is. And number five, play the long game. Children grow up, narratives shift, and maturity changes perspective. And to a message to children that might hear this one day when they're older. If you ever looked back and you realized that you pulled away from a parent who loved you dearly and did everything in their power to make it work, you need to understand they probably cried in silence. They probably questioned themselves daily. They probably never stopped loving you. And they waited, not angrily, but patiently, because real love doesn't shut off when they're not preferred. Being the non-preferred parent is one of the most emotionally brutal roles you can carry. You're expected to absorb rejection gracefully. You're expected to stay steady without acknowledgement. You're expected to love without guarantee of reciprocation. But here's what I'll say. Preferred does not equal better. Chosen in the moment does not equal right in the long term. And parenting is not about being liked. It's about being responsible. If you're holding the line with integrity, even when it costs you emotionally, you're not losing, you're leading. And leadership is lonely sometimes, but it matters.
Hey guys, so I am so excited, just mind blown that this guy, that you guys can see his wonderful face here, Mark Ludwig, just even thought about being on my podcast. It's an honor. I'm so grateful to have him here. I'm so glad to have my co-host Kara back with us this week. And so before we even talk about the episode, Mark, I would love if you would just give a little intro about who you are, kind of what you're doing in the father's rights movement currently, which is so much. So you don't even have to tell it all. Just give us a little snippet of what you're doing, because I said on my last episode, I'm aspiring to be more like you. Right now, I'm just
Yeah.
a voice and I'm some ears for people to talk to, but eventually, like, I want to get dirty. I want to get out there, get my hands dirty, and I want to join the efforts and boots on the ground and be able to actually make change. And that's what you're doing. And it's incredible. So take the stage. I'm gonna shut
Yeah.
up for a minute and just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. Yeah, Ryan Powell recommended you, so if my buddy Ryan recommends you, I gotta do it.
Gotta
So
love
yeah,
Ryan.
I've seen quite a bit. Just to be honest, it's only been within the last month or so that I heard about you, but I'm very impressed with what I see,
Thank you.
and definitely a welcome addition to the shared parenting community. We need more female voices out there to steal the narrative of the angry dad image. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank
And
you.
for those that aren't familiar with me, I've got a 40-year background in the political arena. I turned 62 in a couple months. I'm feeling old these
Woo!
days. But yeah, I've been around politics for 41 years. Was a candidate for U.S. Congress, served on the Missouri Small Business Policy Council, did a lot of political training, managed a lot of campaigns. I've been a part of about 70 different campaigns and helped raise millions of dollars for candidates over the 41 years. And so as a result, when the shared parenting issue hit me, I just started realizing there was a niche of people who didn't understand what to do to reach legislators. So many people thought they wanted to protest and not putting those people down. It sounds like the obvious
No.
thing to do. But if somebody doesn't have a background in politics, they don't know what to do. So I thought, why don't I fill that niche and sort of help train, educate, enable, and empower people on the right techniques to educate legislators. So
Yeah.
I started doing that, I guess it was about 12 years ago. I spent the first year studying the shared parenting community before I ever popped my head above the water. My dad was an engineer, so I had posters all over my bedroom. Back then, there were only about 200 organizations total in the entire community. Now there's about 4,700. But
Wow.
I analyzed every one of them. What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? What was the void that was created? Because I didn't want to recreate the wheel. If somebody else was out there doing it, I'd rather partner with them and collaborate than
Right.
divide the resources again. But there just was nobody doing it. So I started doing Facebook Lives, originally on the Father's Rights Movement page, back when we only had 17,000 people. Now it's got, I think, 870,000. But
Insane.
and we thought it was huge back then. We were like 17,000. Can you believe how big this thing is? And but I would do these Facebook Lives on Monday nights, and this is before Facebook started doing all their algorithm bannings of different issues and everything. But I would each Monday night I would take a different topic: how to get past the gatekeeper, what are the steps to passing a bill, how do you give a Senate hearing testimony. And I would get at times we would have several thousand people not rebroadcast live. We would have 3,000 people, 4,000 people tuning in live on Monday nights. It was crazy. And by the time they got shared, it was into the millions. And
Wow.
then unfortunately, at some point several years ago, Facebook changed their algorithm and messed it all up. But since that time, I've become very involved. I've helped pass, I was part of all 5 teams that helped pass the 5 states that we have: Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia, Florida, and Missouri. I've personally been involved with over 40 states, and
Wow.
I'm either an advisor or a board member to 17 different 17 different political organizations outside the shared parenting community: National Association of Christian Lawmakers, Council for National Policy, Eagle Council. Within the shared parenting community, I collaborate with about 150 organizations and about 200 leaders that I have regular Zoom meetings with every single month. So keeping very, very busy, especially these days, really working hard on the federal level. I've been very blessed and fortunate that I've got 13 friends or acquaintances that are a part of the current administration, some of them in very, very high levels. So right now I'm working on Title IV-D reform, creating a White House Commission for Boys, Men, and Fathers, and working on the Violence Against Women's Act, which is coming up for renewal next year. So hopefully we can strip some of that away next year. So
That's incredible.
But most important thing is I'm Levi's dad, and that's the whole reason I'm here.
That's the best. That's the most important. Did you join this because you had your own issues of being a father, being separated, or was this just a passion?
Yeah, I was very, very targeted. My goal was to be at least governor of Missouri and possibly president. I had, since I was 6 years old, I was president of my college, my student body class in junior high, high school, college. I was Mr. Gung Ho, committed to being president since I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
To this day, I've never tasted a beer. I've never smoked a cigarette, never did a drug. They weren't going to find anything in my background.
No.
And so I was very heavily groomed to run a campaign with a specific progress to run for governor of Missouri. And then when my son was born, don't want to go into all the detail because he's old enough now that he sees social media.
Yep.
And regardless of what his mom's done, all of us have done bad things. So it's not fair to, and none of us are perfect. So it's not all I'm the perfect one and she's the perfect bad one.
No.
I tend to think so, but I'm kidding. But at the same point, I don't want my son hearing things about his mother. But there were some issues that came to light and that I felt necessitated a paternity test. And in an effort to avoid one, she moved without telling me. I went 204 days without seeing him. And I just assumed that with my little beaver cleaver record, I thought I didn't really want to go for full custody, but I thought I didn't think I'd get anything less than half. I thought I'd give you more than half.
Right.
At that point, I had served on a lot of board of directors for foster kids and special needs kids. I mean, I had a very active background working with kids. And I was just shocked when I walked out of there and they said, well, since your child isn't familiar with you, we don't want to give him too much time with you because he might be traumatized. So for the first 6 months, we're going to give you an hour every Tuesday and Thursday and 2 hours every Saturday. And I'm thinking, so if my son was kidnapped by a stranger and not his mom, would you say, well, you know what? He kind of likes those kidnappers. So even though you're the parents, we're going to leave him with the kidnappers and gradually wean you in. And I was fairly well known in St. Louis. So all 3 of the major networks did a feature on me that kind of went viral.
Wow.
And early on, I was kind of in this pity party, the woe is me, I'm the only one. And boy, if they could hear my story, it would change everything. And then once my story went viral, I started getting calls, which I still get to this day, at least 30 a day, every single day, 7 days a week, from people that tell me stories that are as bad or worse than mine. All of them think that their story is the only one like it. And that was when I realized, okay, this is no longer about me and my son. This is about a systemic problem.
Yeah.
And I just really felt, not to be over spiritualistic, but I just really felt a calling that maybe I was never really meant to be a candidate, which was hard to accept after all those years of thinking this is where my life's direction is going. But I really believe in my heart now, I was never meant to run for office. I was meant to use the knowledge, the connections, all the information I'd learned about how to deal with legislators from the inside to help get legislation passed from the outside. So I'm pretty comfortable that now. People always, the party tries to get me a lot to run in Missouri. And I'm like, first off, until Levi's 18, no way in the world would I do that. He needs a dad.
Yeah.
And because even though I am very busy and I travel quite a bit, literally every trip I plan is around Levi's schedule. The first thing I
Yeah.
do every month is what are the points on that calendar that Levi's number one. And then if there's openings, I'm going to fit trips in around that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, I will say the one thing joining this movement is the number of messages I get daily of these horrific stories. And a lot like yours. My child was taken away. They moved across the country, or, we've all heard Ryan's story of being unmarried, that they have zero rights until
Yeah,
proven.
that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it is absolutely devastating. Kara, I think you're frozen, but it's fine. There you are. You're back. Um, Absolutely devastating, the different stories that I hear on a daily basis. And I'm like, just like you said, this is a systemic issue. This isn't a handful of fathers. This is thousands, thousands of fathers that are dealing with this. And even if we want to go the not just fathers, it's the thousands of non-custodial parents that are dealing with issues like this. And so I'm so glad to be a part of the movement. Like I said, I want to be boots on the ground eventually and learn more and get out there and be able to actually lobby and make some changes. And so we'll kind of get into the episode a little bit. This episode is called what's the toll of being the non-preferred parent. And we've talked a lot about alienation. We talk a lot about gatekeeping, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen when there's a separation, when there's a divorce, when there's a breakup, whatever it is. One parent is going to be named primary and the other one's not. And typically, the other one becomes now non-preferred because they had to be named not primary for a reason, right? And this becomes a whole thing. And it comes with a lot of psychological damage, in my opinion. And so, would you say, or kind of speak to, psychologically, what does this do to a father if a child is conditioned to now treat the non-custodial parent differently and they've now become non-preferred? What kind of damage does this do to the father psychologically when their children start pulling away?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, and it's very timely. I've got a book coming out, and I'm not here to sell the book, but I really do have a book coming out next
But
week
I do want to talk about it.
called The Parental Alienation Playbook, and it goes through 25 techniques that a alienator will do. And for most people in my situation, we're blindsided because the people who've been through this, they normally don't talk about it a lot to the outside. So most people have no idea what happens. And so I went through pretty much I said, Levi's 15 now, so which means our custody situation started 16 years ago. And I've been around the shared parenting community 12 years. 4 years of that was basically a valley of depression where I had no idea and I couldn't even articulate, I couldn't put a handle on what am I feeling. I just knew I was feeling something, but I was at a loss for how to describe it. So that's what I love about social media and why I wrote this book. I'm not in any way a parental alienation expert. So I even put that in the first chapter of the book. It's not to put me as, you'll still want to talk to people that are much better qualified than I am. But what I try to do is just put a name at least on 25 things that I noticed so that when it happens to you, you don't feel alone. You're like, oh my gosh, because that's what happened to me. I still remember, it's still hard to talk about. I'm sitting on the very couch that even though I have the background so you can't see because I put one of the little picture backgrounds on. It took me forever to figure out how to do that. But I'm sitting on the very couch that, 16 years ago. I still remember during that 204 days, I'm being told I'll never see my son again. For a period of that time, I didn't know where he was. And, anybody who has a child knows they're your life. And to have that ripped out of your life and to think you're never going to see them again, and to feel like nobody can relate. And so what I did, I internalized. I didn't want to be the Debbie Downer So I was very active. I was on all kinds of board of directors, like I said, for different foundations and everything in St. Louis. I quit all of them, and I did the worst thing you could have done. I became a recluse, drowning in my own thoughts. And when you're sitting by yourself, you're not thinking positive thoughts, you're thinking bad thoughts. And it becomes a downward spiral, and you feel like, you know what, there's no way out. And for myself, I consider myself a very strong Christian, not to put my own views on anyone else, but if it wasn't for that, I would have committed suicide. I mean, I did not see a way out. It was just nonstop pain. And so the reason I wrote this book, and the reason I'm glad that you do stuff like this, is to raise awareness so that if somebody's sitting out there today on a couch watching this, we hope you realize you're not alone. We've been there. We know what it's like. And I know you don't see a way out, but trust me, you're going to make it out. The first step you have to do is try and take a step back and just take a breath and just start trying to identify what's happening to you. Because that was what frustrated me, and especially during the next 4 years when these techniques started happening, the gatekeeping, the phone monitoring, the grilling, the salutation removal, the activity hijacking, the overshadowing memories, dampening, all these different things. It helps if at least if you can put a name on it and say, oh my gosh, I'm going through that. And then you add on to that, okay, other people have been through it, so maybe there's a solution, and it helps get your mind out of the woe is me and get you focusing on the solution by doing that.
Yeah.
But it's very frustrating because two things. Number one, my first thought was more about my son than about myself. Is I didn't want my son growing up without a dad. I can take the pain. I've had I've not had an easy life, but I just don't want my son to have to grow up without a dad. And when I started doing the reading of what happens to kids, and the statistics, a kid grew up without a dad, high school dropout rates, incarceration rates, behavioral problems, violent crime, 70 to 94% of every single one of those is tracked to growing up without a father.
Yep.
And here my son had a father. He just didn't know it and may not know it. And it was just very frustrating. But the other thing that we want people to realize is it's okay to say that you're hurting too, because it is frustrating. Not to brag, but I think I would have been a phenomenal dad if I would have given, I think I still am. But the opportunities my son could have had because of the background, the connections, the relationships, the way I had lived my life. If he would have had 50-50 access to me, the things that he would have had in his life would have been so much better than what he's even had at this point.
Yeah.
And so it is okay to feel, some, but the other thing is you have to identify. And that's, like I said, when you're, the phone gatekeeping, a lot of people don't realize, it gets frustrating, but it is. And there's a difference too between an occasional missed call versus, for those of you that don't know, I think one of the things I became most famous for is I started writing Levi a journal, because then when I started hearing about what happens to kids growing up without their dad, and I'd had some health issues, and I thought, what if something happens to me and he never knows that I wanted to be a part of his life? So during the 204 days, I started writing notes to him in a journal. And I never talked bad about his mom. It was more about how much I loved him, how much I pictured being with him. And, I drove by the school bus stop today, and I can't wait to hopefully someday see you at the bus stop. But I kept that up. So I literally wrote to him every day for the first 12 years of his life. Every single day of his life is documented. And just because I wanted him to know that if something ever happened to me, he's got in my own handwriting how much I thought of him every single day.
Yeah.
And as I kept that journal, I did make little notations that were really only for me, where there were numbers. And that was how many times I tried calling that day that got a rejected call. And we're talking in the first 12 years of his life, close to 2,000. And we're not talking like I called 12 times a day. We're talking, once, twice, 3 times throughout the day, I would make an attempt, and not a single one of them would get answered. No return calls, no messages. Yeah. And from the child's perspective, they have to wonder, well, gosh, because they're not told that, hey, we didn't answer the call. The ringer was off. They don't know that the phone call didn't go in. And so, for myself, I try to never put his mom down, but I made sure that every time he knew, oh man, I was trying to get a hold of you. Your mom must have been busy, but boy, I tried calling every single day. But then as you get older, you notice there's one chapter I do on the phone monitoring, where it becomes very obvious. Either you see the other parent there or their shadow, or you see the kid looking out of the corner of their eye almost like they have to ask for permission before they can give a response. And the trauma that causes a child, they start feeling from that point on like their entire life is being watched by Big Brother of, what can they say? What can they not say? And it gets this anxiousness within their whole life to where you can't have a normal relationship with a child, that they're always on point worried about, am I going to say the wrong thing to my dad?
I'm glad you brought that up because it is a huge grief and a huge psychological toll on the fathers. Um, but it is so much on the children too. And I've heard stories of children afraid to talk to dad because they're afraid he's recording them because that's what mom does. Every
Yeah,
time
and
they
then
talk,
there's one
mom
chapter I do
records.
on grilling, which is basically it's in the form of interrogation where the kid, gets in the car, and not the normal, hey, what did you do? How did things go this weekend? It's an interrogation.
Yeah,
Who was over there? What time did you go to bed? What did you have to eat? How much did you have to eat? What was on TV? And it doesn't take too long for the child to start feeling a discomfort, like, is there something wrong with that other house? The parent doesn't say the
right.
parent's dangerous. They give the impression that that parent is dangerous or unsafe, or something wrong is wrong with that parent. And that's why they're asking these questions. And over time, it doesn't take too long for the child to automatically translate that into their visits. So
Yeah,
now while they're visiting, they're not relaxing and enjoying dad, they're studying. Okay, what is around here? What's going on in this house? And they
yeah,
basically become the investigator in the house,
yeah,
to be able to report back, because they know they get that little treat, and that good feeling, because if they go back and tell the other parent something bad about the parent, they get basically rewarded. And even
yeah.
if it's not a direct
Exactly.
reward, indirectly, knowing that that parent wants some dirt on the other parent, that becomes the treat that the child feels psychologically. Hey, I've been successful. I told mom something bad about dad,
Yeah.
and just creates that whole. And so, from the outside looking in, when you mention words like parental alienation, people, and I thought the same thing too before it happened to me. You would think, oh, you're just overreacting. It's not a big deal. And the challenge is, we're not talking about one, two, or even 20 or 30 instances. We're talking hundreds and
Everything.
hundreds of small little instances that basically get groomed into the poor child's mind. And they start seeing one parent as the superior parent, one is the inferior parent. Why does one parent have to ask permission to change the schedule? Why does one parent have to ask permission to go on vacation? Yeah. And the child starts perceiving there's something wrong with that parent. And Levi even mentioned it. I actually even have it in my journal. When he was 6 years old one time, I forget what he did. He did something that I told him, hey, I don't want you ever do, you don't do that. And
Hmm.
he was like, well, you're not he literally said, you're not my real parent.
Oh,
And I said, what?
Oh,
And he said, well, mom's my real parent. I live with her. And
yeah.
and from his perspective, that's what he really thought. And
Yeah.
imagine, that's why we have this fatherless problem. Imagine trying to discipline a teenager when for years they've been groomed that I don't have to listen to dad. And so many, that's a big problem that we have, is the discipline factor. Because if you discipline a child the way you should and the way you want to, it'll be used against you.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously you can't spank a kid, or immediately that's going to be physical abuse. You're going to
That was
see,
abuse.
CPF is showing up at your door.
Yeah.
But even just the other thing, if you discipline a child on a Sunday afternoon, that's the last thing they're thinking about all week long. So the next weekend or 2 weeks later, the custodial parent says, well, you may not want to go to your dad because you're going to get in trouble again, I guess. And so then the child
oh,
starts internalizing that. And all of a sudden they don't want to see dad. And not because dad's a bad parent, because dad's the good parent. Dad's trying to do what's right, but that's
Yeah.
being used against him.
Yeah. I've heard Kara and I were talking because I did an entire episode on parental alienation. Um, and we were talking about this where it's like it's gatekeeping, and I called it almost like a gateway drug to explain what gatekeeping is. It's like the gateway into alienation. And we talked about even little things like, we heard an example of where like a dad bought a dirt bike for their kid for Christmas. Kid was super excited, like, heck yeah, I got a dirt bike. Goes home, tells mom, I got a dirt bike. And what, instead of mom being excited and being like, wow, that's so cool, mom's like, oh, but I bet he didn't get you a helmet, did he? Yeah, see, he doesn't care about your safety. And boom, kid goes back to the dad's 2 weekends later and refuses to ride the dirt bike because it's not safe. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that's gatekeeping.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna tell you that your dad's a bad guy. I'm not gonna tell you that that house isn't safe, but I'm gonna plant seeds and make you think it, make you come up with it on your own. Now you believe it. Now he's not the preferred parent. Now I don't have to listen to him. When they're teenagers, you hear like, dad's like, hey, I'm excited. Let's go watch this movie. Oh, well, that's PG-13. We have to call mom and make sure we're allowed to. But I'm your dad. I make safe decisions for you. I looked it up. It's okay. No, we have to ask mom. You know, we hear stories
Yeah.
like this all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what? Like, how do you, for one, how does a father like not lose it being this made overnight non-preferred parent? But then how are these kids going to eventually grow up and like the light's going to turn on, and that poor child, the guilt that they're going to go through when they realize, holy crap, I cannot believe I did that to my dad. It's going
Yeah.
to be devastating.
Oh, without a doubt. And like I say, you hit the nail on the head of what kids go through, all the stuff that they have to deal with. And the big problem is the isolation, because especially dads traditionally, moms tend to, want to talk and verbalize in moms groups and prayer groups. Dads, when they feel depressed, they don't want to share it. We were raised, hey, man up, deal with it. So the way we deal with it is we isolate. We sit at home. We don't go out. We don't hang out with our friends. And then the other party ends up with these flying monkeys. And sometimes it's like in my own case, his mom has had 5 other kids, and for me, Levi's my only child. So all he's ever heard is me. He's never heard anybody edify me. He's never heard anybody say how great your dad is. Periodically, at church, because I used to teach, his classes at church and everything like that. But for the most part, it's him and me. Whereas when they're in the other house, it's nonstop hearing how bad your dad is, how bad your dad is a loser, your mom is so great. And then they start doing little things to whittle away. And I even did one chapter on that. I call it home team hostility, where I'm from
Mm,
St. Louis, which is a baseball town. You drive anywhere in St. Louis, they're Cardinal fans. You're almost kicked out of St. Louis if you're not a Cardinal fan.
yeah.
And, I can remember as a kid seeing pictures of my dad as a kid at Cardinal games in Sportsman's Parks with his dad, my grandpa. And then
Yeah.
I can remember the kid, all the great memories of me going to ball games with my dad and my grandpa. And so, I'm not like a baseball player or anything, but everybody in St. Louis is a baseball fan. Well, I turn on a Cardinal game and Levi starts getting into it, and he wants to play baseball and he calls himself a Cardinal. Then 2 weeks later, he comes back over and there was a Cardinal game, and I turned the TV on and he hates the Cardinals. And,
Yeah.
and I thought that was just odd that a child that young hates the Cardinals. And our big rival is the Cubs. And all of a sudden, he's a Cubs fan. And once again, we're not nitpicking. It's not that by itself. It's the fact that over that 2 week period of time, I guarantee you, he had been implanted and implanted and implanted, not about the Cardinals, but a way to break a father-son bond.
Yeah.
Because now we can't have the
Exactly.
bond, because he never, and to this day, he has never wanted to go to a Cardinal game, ever. Most kids in St. Louis, they would die to go to Cardinal games. Levi absolutely hates it, never wants to go. And it's not the Cardinal game. It's the memories. It's the experience. It's the bonding. It's the going to the ballpark and getting the hot dog and seeing Fredbird and the feel of the air and the smell of the ball field that you remember. Because I can still remember when I go to Cardinal games, that smell of a stadium reminds me of my dad and my grandpa. And,
Yeah.
and that's what you're missing. And like I said, people on the outside looking in, they think you're nitpicking. Oh, don't worry whether he's a Cardinal fan. It's not the Cardinal fan. It's the break of the bond that I'm worried about.
Yes, exactly. I've seen, oh man, I don't know how many times I've seen this is seeing
any little thing they can do to break a bond between a father and son, specifically the father and son. And I have witnessed it, unfortunately, with, people I know and I'm close with. And it's heartbreaking because that's something that you can enjoy, just you and your dad. I know that's how my brother is with our dad. And to see even that little tiny thing ripped away, like, you already have taken so much from me. And just to take that little precious thing away from me and my son is just like the cherry on top. And it's heartbreaking to witness firsthand. I hate it.
Yeah, and it's, and Boy Scouts is another thing. My grandpa was a scoutmaster. My dad was an Eagle Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. And it's a neat thing for father son to be hiking trails and going camping together and fixing breakfast together and making peach cobbler and those kind of memories. And he was conditioned. Boy Scouts are bad. That's a stupid organization. And maybe it's not the best organization in the world, but it's a chance for a father and son to bond together that we never had the opportunity to do. Literally, we're never given the opportunity to even go to one meeting.
Do you think being the non-preferred parent by the kids, do you think that sometimes that's proof that you were actually the stable one? Because a child on their own doesn't choose to prefer or non-prefer somebody.
Exactly. Yeah, without a doubt, it's conditioned. And you mentioned too about the guilt that children feel. And that's why I try as hard as I can to not show Levi the animosity. Because if Levi knows how bad I feel and how much I'm hurt, he's going to feel that hurt when he gets older someday.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to ever feel that guilt. I want him to always know that we've got the unconditional love. It's sort of like, because people always ask me too, don't you wish you could get full custody of Levi, or don't you want the judge to ask Levi where he wants to live? And I'm like, absolutely not. I do not want my son to bear the burden of that kind of a choice, because I know, not putting his mom down, but she follows a lot of the, traits. I'm not saying she's a narcissist, but a lot of those type of traits that she has. And there's no doubt in my mind, he would be led to feel so guilty, and he would be cast off forever if he ever said he wanted to live with me. And so the safe choice for him would be to pick his mom, because he knows I've got the unconditional love and I'll always be there waiting around. And I guarantee you, if he did pick his mom, he would have so much guilt thinking, man, I know my dad loves me, and I know he's hurting. And sadly, that's where you get kids that literally commit suicide. I mean, literally commit suicide because of that guilt. And I never want my son. So literally, if he was forced to choose and he picked his mom, my attitude would be, doesn't matter. I'll be here waiting when he turns 18 years old. There's no, where everything's forgiven. I just want my son to be happy. I don't want him to have a stress. I don't want him to have a burden that he should not bear. His child shouldn't have to be bearing the type of burden that should be put on adults, not on a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
That one makes me emotional. Just because I know of a story that we heard about a father that had an opportunity to get 50-50. And he literally gave up in the middle of his hearing because the light bulb clicked and he realized, if I get 50-50 over these children, their lives are going to be hell at the other parents. And it's going to actually make their life worse. And not because I'm a bad dad, because I'm incredible and I'm stable and it would be wonderful. But it's more selfish of me to want them 50-50 than the hell that they're literally going to go through if I win. And
that's exactly what I did. Because people ask me, they're like, Mark, why haven't you gone back for 50-50? Well, two reasons is she's very, very, very wealthy. And I mean, we're not talking, a couple 100,000. We're talking way, way, way into the millions. And so it would be a very costly thing, which I don't have that kind of money. But the other thing is exactly it. It would be all about retaliation with her. She's out to win. It's not about what's best for the child. And in her mind, that would be a loss to her, and Levi would pay hell.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to
Yeah.
have, now in the long run, I was very fortunate. She ended up marrying a new guy that has got homes in Pennsylvania and New York. And this is 2.5 years ago. And I went overnight after 12 and a half years of only getting 4 overnights a month. June 25th of almost 3 years ago now, the 1 month I got 22 overnights. Wow. Because they were traveling, they were shopping. And so the last 2.5 years have been, there's still the mental parental alienation, emotional things that they're doing to him, which are very sad. But at least time-wise, I've been getting a lot of time with him. Yeah. And it's not in the court order, but at least I'm getting it.
I think in your case and in the case that I'm talking about, and so many more that we've heard of, I think it's hard to decipher if conflict is going to hurt the children more, or just quiet stepping away and erasing of one parent hurts the children more. Both hurt.
Yeah.
They're
And
both
the other
going to
thing
hurt.
too, for the parents watching this, is we respect your own decisions. You're going to get so many people that say, you should have done this, you should have done that. Please don't put guilt on another parent for the choices they're making. You haven't lived in our shoes. You don't know what it's like and the pressure you're facing. Because I do see parents, sometimes they're like, Mark, I signed my rights away and I feel guilty. And my attitude is, you know what? No judgment at all.
No.
I don't know your situation. So I don't fault you at all for what you had to do. So we need to really just support people. We can give them recommendations. If somebody wants my advice before they do something, hey, I'll give them advice. Hey, you might want to consider this, consider this, consider this. But once they've made that decision, please don't judge somebody for the choices they've made. They go to bed every night wondering if they did the right thing. They don't need that kind of guilt.
No. I agree. Wow.
If you let's go with that then. If you have a dad listening right now and they feel like their children are slipping away and they're feeling guilty, what would you say to them?
A couple of things. Number one, find a support group. And I apologize. I hate when people cry during an interview because I can't pay attention to what they're saying. I always think, would you just stop?
I'm so sorry.
So I apologize for crying through this, but I have a hard time talking because this was me. So I apologize ahead of time if I cried going through this. But find a support group. Like I said, what I did, I sat at home and I came so close one night. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I was that close, probably within seconds. And I just, please find somebody. The reason was I was by myself. Find a Bible study. And what I tell people to do, find a Bible study, even if you don't believe in God. Go to a church, a true church. Go to the pastor and say, look, I don't believe in your message. I don't believe in what you do, but I need somebody that'll support me. Do you have a men's group? Do you have a Bible study that can tap into? And if you're honest and tell them that, they won't cram, a good church won't cram things down your throat. They'll just accept you and say, hey, we just want to be a support for you. And so I did start going to Bible study, which is my church now. And that really helped a lot, just to know that I had people that cared about me, that weren't judging me. So find a support group. Social media is great now because you can tap into things that helps you to not feel as alone. You feel like, okay, there's other people out there. Number one, don't ever feel guilty about what you're going through, and don't worry about what other people think about what you're going through. Try and picture the long game. Try and picture 20 years from now, you're reconnected with your child. How do you want your child to see that you acted during those 20 years? What type of a role model were you as a father? And that's what I try to do, is I want Levi to see the process that, yes, there's times I'm upset. People like, Mark, you seem so calm all the time. I'm not calm all the time. I just don't want my son to see me, because I don't want him to learn that every time you get frustrated, you punch a wall or you do something like that. I want him to realize that emotional control. But I do want him to realize, you know what, Dad was committed to me. So I encourage you to focus on the long goal, and then ask yourself, and once again, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm preaching, but there's a plan. Like I said, I thought the plan for my life was to be either governor of Missouri and or president of the United States. And to take a step back and say, you know what, maybe that wasn't the plan for my life. Maybe the plan for my life was to take people in the shared parenting community, who had never been to a state capitol and didn't know what to do, And now, and it's so refreshing now because, my Facebook feed is threaded, just bombarded on a daily basis of people going to capitals and indirectly. And it's not like I did it or anything like that, but it just is so cool to see because I can show almost on an organizational chart. It's never really an organization, but where this person came to one of my seminars or this person started coming to some of my trainings, and that's either they're the person at the Capitol or a friend of theirs is at the Capitol. And I think,
That's cool.
how cool that God was able to use my story to be able to help. And it's not about me. And that's the key too. Always remember, you're the messenger, not the message. Unfortunately, we get some people that they want to come into this for a statue or to make themselves famous. Guys, we're the messenger. So ask yourself, what is God's purpose for this? And how can I be a good steward of the experiences that God gave me and using those for change? But I'm very at peace now that this is where God wants me. I don't always enjoy it. It doesn't matter. That's God's plan, and I'm doing it.
Yeah. I'm
that.
honored to even have the conversation with you because, like I said, I came into this movement for personal reasons, and I don't share my story right now on social media. Just 'cause, we can't right now, and one day we'll be able to share our story. But I came in for personal reasons, but I came in because of the stories that I've heard and the things that I have seen around my own community in other states with family, with friends, and then quickly came across and I met Ryan through happenstance. And then I saw you and I was like, this guy he's actually doing things. Like he's doing the things. And then Garza too. I would love to talk to him. And Lauren, the
Oh my
dadvocate.
gosh, the advocate. Oh yeah, she's
She's
awesome.
she's like my girl. I'm
Oh,
like, I gotta,
she's amazing.
dude, I
And
gotta
she's
get
what I
her.
love about Lauren. She's just when you talk to her, you just feel like she's just like the best friend that you could have ever wanted. She's amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to get her on the phone. The present dad, present father. There's just so many, Randy. There's so many people that are just incredible in this movement and that are doing things and going places, and I'm excited. I'm just like boots on the ground. I'm ready to be a part of it and not just be a face on a a podcast. Eventually, when all my episodes are done, I'm ready to get on and start doing things. But I do want to be able to be somebody that helps provide support groups because there are so many fathers that do give up.
Yeah.
There are so many fathers that become the non-preferred parent, not by the child's choice, but because that's how they were conditioned, and they give up. And it's we talked about in another episode, 70 to 80% of suicides in the United States are men. And then you throw on top of that the hurt and the grief of custody battles. And it's I want that. If I could fight anything, it would be a fight against that, to stop losing parents to death and to suicide. And there's such an emotional cost for these fathers of staying silent. And I want there to be a place where they don't have to be quiet, where they're able to just get it out and just talk and know that they are not alone. There are literally hundreds of thousands of parents going through this just in our country, and then bring in all the other
And that's
countries.
what I said. I think you're filling a good niche, and because some people say, do I need to get involved in legislation? Everybody plays a role. It's like a baseball team. We don't want everybody running out to the pitcher's mound. I think you've got a great niche of being able to help guide people through the process of what they're going through. I think this is where God wants you to be, is to be a podcaster, and we can start feeding people to you, and you can start help with that, the therapy, if you will, of the process that they're going through.
Well, I appreciate
So I
it.
do need. I apologize. I'm over. I forgot I've got another interview. I'm supposed
I know
to be
you
on
got
at
to
1
go.
o'clock.
You got to go. Kara just sent me a message and was like, Rachel, we got to let him go. He's got to go. We could talk for hours.
But I appreciate you so much and so proud of you for what you're doing. I really am. And anything I can ever do to help, let me know. Kudos to my boy Ryan for getting the word out about you. Can't say enough about him. He's a great guy. Just also, in case people are interested in how to get a hold of me, the organization is called the National Council for Equal Shared Parenting. It's a collaboration of about the biggest 60 organizations in the entire country, all sort of working together. The website is the abbreviation ncesp.org. So ncesp.org. And then I have the training company that trains people how to do legislation. That's the stlmarkludwig.com.
Perfect. I love it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And to all of our listeners, thanks for being on here. We love you. We support you. And we will see you next week.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.